Welcome back to part 2 of our 8th grade lab safety discussion. Today we're going to be talking about the general lab safety, and remember your job is to have your student copy of this open so that whenever you see that little white dash you can click in the center of it and then type in the information that's required to fill in that blank. So the first thing to look at is number 1. It's important to know where all safety equipment is located and how to use it. We'll talk in detail about how to use the equipment when we do our discussion, but the first thing you need to do is figure out where is the safety equipment in our room. So what I'd like you to do on the next slide is to make a list of the safety equipment you can find that's located in our room. Some of it we have as safety equipment in the building, but it may not be in our room, so that might show up on the list too. It's good to know where some of our building-wide safety equipment is as well. And your job is to try to figure out 10 things. So you should pause this video now and then look around the room and try to identify at least 10 things you think could be safety equipment. So please pause this video and fill in your notes. All right, welcome back. Well, I hope that you found some things. So one of the things you should have found somewhere in our room is the fire extinguisher. Now, it's extremely important to realize that you don't play with a fire extinguisher, and you should never aim this at any person or animal, because fire extinguishers, the material that comes out of it, can be extremely cold, and it can actually give you major complications. If you have somebody that you aim it at that has breathing issues, such as asthma, it could potentially cause them to suffocate or have major breathing problems. Another item you should have noticed in our room would be the goggles and goggle cabinet. We have particular things we'll tell you about the goggles, but goggles and goggle cabinet are important to know. The goggle cabinet has a UV light in it to help get rid of bacterial problems. The telephone. The telephone is an important information device for us. If we have a health issue in our room, we can use a telephone and call the office to get help. If we notice something bad going on inside the building, we can call the office and get help. They can call us to get people if somebody needs to go up there for some reason, leave early or whatever it may be. The dust broom and dustpan. Whenever we make a mess, we need to clean it up. That was indicated in part 1. And one of the things you should realize is the dust broom dustpan can help protect you from getting cuts. So it's always good to use dust broom dustpan properly. Tongs, forceps, hot hands, and grippers. I'll show you some pictures of those later in our presentation. But these are things that can help you prevent burning yourself when working in a lab, especially when you use the Bunsen burners and beakers, as well as the ring stands. The fire blanket. This is another great item. Again, don't play with any of the safety equipment. That can get you into trouble and also potentially hurt someone in the future. But the fire blanket is a nice device to use if somebody were to catch a part of themselves on fire. The fire blanket is really simple to use. You pull on the bottom of it, the blanket pops out, you wrap it around the person, have them roll around the floor, you gently pat them out, and somebody will call the office for help. The emergency shower. This is what we use to wash out our eyes or to wash chemicals off body parts if we get it on them. Now realize this will be a painful experience as you have to hold your eye open wide while you're flushing water across your eye from your nose out to your ear. Not a pleasant situation. And then also the school nurse and eventually most likely 911 will be called, or somebody will take you to the doctor. The sink, the soap, the paper towel. Definitely a good idea to use that. Before you do labs, you should always wash your hands. And when you complete the lab, you should wash your hands. For some labs, if we're using chemicals and things like that, you should wash your hands if you think you got anything on your hands. It's a great way to keep yourself safe and healthy. Hand sanitizer, another great way to keep yourself safe before you do a lab. Now realize the hand sanitizer doesn't have the same function as the soap and the water. So you want to be careful with that. Broken glass container, I'll show you a picture of that. That'll be located in our room. For us, that's a container where anything that gets broken that's glass or pointy, sharp object, we put it in there to protect ourselves and also to protect our custodians. Other items you may have noticed in the room, there's a red button on the wall somewhere, and that is our gas emergency shutoff button. It makes a loud click when it's pulled on or turned off. Please never play with that. That's similar to what you see at a gas station. So if we have an emergency and we need to shut down all the Bunsen burners at once, we go over the wall and we push that button in, and within a matter of a moment, a few seconds, all the Bunsen burners go out at once. So that's a great saver for us. The door lock can protect us from things that shouldn't be in our room. The garbage can. If you have a messy work area, you have a mess on the floor, that means people can slip and trip. That's not good. People can get things on their hands that shouldn't be on their hands, so please make sure you throw away any material that doesn't belong on the floor or your work table or your work area in a lab. Aprons are an option. Now, the aprons don't have to be worn all the time. However, if you're wearing nice clothing and you want to protect it, feel free to wear an apron as long as you fold it up and put it back where it belongs. The aprons will be required for a couple of labs when we use chemicals just to help prevent them from spilling on you. It's a good idea to use them. The chemical spill kit. We'll talk about this a little bit in class, but that's what your teacher will use if we're ever using strong acids or bases. It's an expensive kit, so we don't use it for everything. Some things we can just dilute with water and we're okay. But if it's a strong acid or strong base, your teacher will use the cleanup kit to clean it up for you. This will be indicated in the pre-lab discussion as to whether you can clean up the materials or whether your teacher has to do it. The fire alarm pole is most likely located out in the hallway. We'll talk about that in class when we figure out which classroom we're in. And the emergency bag and bucket, those are things we never want to have to use. However, that emergency bag is very important. As teachers, we need to keep them up to date. So if we do have to exit the building at any given time or go to another area of the building, we have the roll call sheets in there so we can quickly figure out who's there and who's missing so that you're located and accounted for. The emergency bucket, we'll talk about that in class. Hopefully we never ever have to use that. And since we've changed the Alice protocol, pretty good chances we will never need to use that emergency bucket. The teacher, great resource for safety information. Maybe you put that down on your list, maybe you didn't. And students, you are the first front. As a teacher, I cannot see what everyone is doing at all points and times. I try to be observant. I do my best. But sometimes people do things that look like they're going to be safe, but then they switch and do something else, and then it's not safe. So you have to look out for each other to keep each other safe. So hopefully you came up with this list, and maybe you have more, and that's great. Please share out in class if you get the opportunity. Number 2, never play with lab or safety equipment or materials, especially if you haven't been told what we're doing with them. Some things look innocent, but they can actually hurt you. Number 3 on our list of general safety information, always follow instructions and wait until you're told to begin before starting any lab. Don't just go back in the lab and start on things, even if you think you know what you're doing. There's always something that as teachers we need to tell you beforehand to make sure everyone's safe and how to dispose of equipment, or not equipment, but supplies. Number 4, now remember in part 1B, we said you shouldn't be eating in the room. So number 4 should be an easy one to follow through on. Never eat or smell anything in the lab. Now, for those of you who paid attention over the years and had this in science classes before, you should understand what wafting is. If you do need to smell something in the lab as part of the lab procedure, we will tell you that during the pre-lab time, okay? Otherwise, you should not intentionally try to deeply inhale and smell any chemicals in the room. If you do need to waft something, you hold it away from your body with one hand and you gently fan it towards yourself with another hand while inhaling. And that'll give you the general idea of what the smell of the item is. Remember, don't drink the chemicals. Be safe. Shouldn't have to say it, but you never know. Some people like to dare each other to do other things. Some people think it looks like water, but it's not always water. And that's where our next slide here is. It says, little Johnny took a drink, but he will drink no more. For what he thought was H2O was H2SO4. Now, when you look at this beaker, you can make some observations on this. It's a clear beaker. It looks like it has a clear liquid in it. There's a little less than 500 milliliters of liquid in it. We don't know the temperature. We don't know the chemical composition of the liquid. That's all we know about it, is the other stuff we said. The problem is, this could be water to quench your thirst, or it could be H2SO4, which is a chemical formula for sulfuric acid. That would do you some great bodily harm and potentially kill you, depending on how strong it was, for sure. It would definitely change your life. So the moral of this statement is, even though you think you know what it is, you need to be careful. And the other thing is, never ever eat or drink out of lab glassware. It's not safe. Even though you wash it, even though I wash it, there still could be some remaining contaminants that can cause you problems. All right, so here's back to our wafting. Wafting, hold it out away from your body, give it a little fanning motion, and take a little sniff. Don't stick your nose right over the substance and take a big inhalation, because otherwise that chemical could potentially burn your nose and your lungs and cause you permanent lung damage. You have to be careful when you inhale substances. All right, number 5, don't do unauthorized experiments. Be careful. We tell you what you're supposed to do in the lab because we want to protect you and keep you safe. The next one, wear safety goggles and aprons when necessary. We'll tell you this in the pre-lab as to when you need to wear them. Now you'll notice there's 3 things that you need to type into your presentation for your notes. Goggles are necessary when chemicals are being used. Now, technically water is a chemical, but generally if it's just regular tap water or distilled water, you won't have to wear goggles. However, there might be something mixed with that water, so you have to make sure you wear your goggles when we tell you to. Heating devices are being used. For 8th grade, generally what we're going to be using will be the Bunsen burners. If we have to use hot plates, they would also be included as heating devices. And then when hot liquids are present, you never know, you have to be careful with hot liquids. You don't want them to splash into your eyes. Wear your goggles. Smart lines rule. Remember, your smartness shows when you wear your goggles. Because when you take your goggles off, you'll see some lines on your face, and those are the smart lines. Everyone then, when you walk out of the room, will know you just did a lab. So you had a good day. Remember, to wear your goggles properly, make sure you keep them over your eyes, not on your forehead, not on top of your head, not on the table beside you, not on your neck. When we say that you have to wear the goggles in the lab, if you refuse to wear them, you will not be doing that lab activity because it would be unsafe for you to do so. So please make sure you wear your goggles. Keep your work area clean. Dispose of materials properly. We talked about that before, and we will tell you how to dispose of materials properly and safely in our pre-lab time. Report all injuries and accidents immediately. Don't just shake it off and walk out the door and then we get an email or phone call from a parent saying, hey, what happened to my kiddo at school today? They came home with this big mark on their thumb or something like that. Let us know. So if it's something that needs attention, we'll help you with it, or we'll send you the school nurse, or they will call home so you can get the attention you need. We don't want anyone walking out injured. And number 9, never use broken or cracked glassware. This can be a hazard to you. If you use cracked glassware and you try to heat it up, it could potentially explode on you. That would be bad news. Number 10, tie long hair back. Don't wear loose clothing in the lab. And no open toe footwear. I gave you a little example over here. Since we're using Bunsen burners, those are little blowtorches in essence, and they have exposed flames, so you want to make sure that your long hair doesn't get caught up in that flame. We'll do some demonstrations to show you why, and loose clothing also will get caught up. It could potentially get caught up in that flame and also be a major fire hazard. The open toe shoes or sandals, flip-flops, whatever you want to call them, are a major hazard because if you drop something on your foot, you have no line of defense between that object that falls and your skin, which could potentially lead to cuts, chemicals getting into your bloodstream, and it's just a bad situation. And number 11, turn off all equipment in an emergency or when finished with your data collection. And again, if there's an emergency, be quiet, shut down the equipment, and listen for instructions. Number 12, wash your hands with soap and water before and after every lab activity. Remember, hand sanitizer is not the same as soap and water. Number 13, use the broom and dustpan to clean up broken glass. You never ever put broken glassware directly into the garbage. It's unsafe whether you're in school or at home. So we'll have dustpans, we'll have a long broom or two in our room to clean things up. The broken glass goes into the broken glass container. This way the custodial staff knows anything that's in here could potentially cut them. And then number 14, our last one, the most common injuries in the lab are number 1, burns, and number 2, cuts. Burns are most likely to happen due to glassware and ring stands, and cuts are also most likely to happen due to broken glass, trying to pick it up or clean it up and not using the dustpan and broom, or also cutting yourself in the wire mesh of the ring stand. So please always think before you act. This ends part 2 of our lab safety discussion.